I just didn't know you could make animated things for not children. I can't understand it. And so in that one sentence, Mark Merrill's denying the existence of the entire nation of Japan.
Welcome back to Nerd Legion. DoA and I, historic League of Legends casters, are here to talk about the end of the League of Legends show Arcane, which has concluded after its second season. It's been a great ride. Beautiful show.
Yeah. Historic casters in we're from the history of League of Legends and not current League of Legends. But at least we can be a little bit current talking about this show, right?
Sure.
Which was fantastic. I did really enjoy it the entire way through. I know there's some debate in the community about did they like the last two episodes in particular. I've got thoughts on that too. I know you do, but I'm excited to talk about it because this was really like a pleasure to watch from start to finish for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, DoA, what we should start with here is just running over all of the storylines and how they actually concluded. And at the end of this, we can, we'll explain the ending because it was, I think, a little bit janky and sometimes difficult to follow. And then we'll discuss it. There's a lot going on in season 2. There were many more characters that were introduced. There were many more plot lines that were introduced than we saw in season 1. I would say to the detriment of the show, even though I do think the show is quite good overall. So I think as opposed to if you watched our first video that recapped season 1, as well as the first arc, the first 3 episodes of season 2, we're obviously very complimentary. I'm going to be less complimentary this episode, but I do want to make clear that I think the show is good. There are just more flaws with the final 6 episodes and where they ended things, I think primarily due to time.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we said this in our last episode that it seemed like they were setting themselves up for not having enough time to complete everything, and I felt like they added even more than in the episodes 4, 5, and 6. They're adding even more things in there. Like now we're going back in time and all this stuff, and or going to an alternate dimension or something. I'm like, oh man, now we've got even more to resolve. But I think they did a good job of wrapping it up. They didn't do. I think they did about as good of a job as you could do when you've put all that stuff on your own plate. I think the mistake came from, and I'm sure you're going to say this too, is giving yourself too much stuff, right?
Yep.
It's like, Arcane is like you go to like a League of Legends buffet where you love all these different things about the universe and all these different plot lines, and you take so much that at the end of the day you realize you've got too much stuff on your plate and you're never going to be able to finish it all. Some of it's just gonna take a bite out of it, and some of it's gonna go in the trash, but it's never gonna be finished completely like it should be, right? You're gonna end up having some waste at the end, and we got a little bit of that with this show. But again, I'm with you overall. I really liked it. I'm going to have, a couple criticisms here and there, but mostly positive. I still feel very positive about this show.
Yeah, and I think to your buffet example, you don't get to appreciate each of the individual dishes that you're eating a lot of the time. Sometimes it feels like you get to appreciate one really in depth, but the other ones you're taking a bite out of, you're not really having that experience. But at the end of the day, even if you're full, and you didn't get to appreciate every single morsel or every single dish, you still want more. Like, I don't leave this being angry about any of the storylines, because I think all the individual storylines are quite compelling. They're just not wrapped up in a way that I find wholly satisfying, or is going to require additional content that, frankly, we have no idea whether it will ever be made in order to, I think, fully sate you.
Yeah. And that's, they wanted to tell a lot of stories in the universe. They certainly did that. They said they'll continue to do that, which I hope they do. I'd love to see more stuff in the Arcane universe. But right off the bat, I don't know if we're ever going to get another show that's as like well crafted as this one was. It was just, by all accounts, despite contrary accounts from certain members of the Riot Elite, it seemed to be an extremely expensive show, to the point where I don't think that amount of money is ever going to be committed to something like this again, which makes a lot of sense financially, but I'm a little bit sad in advance because, this show just did have that level of quality that I've never really seen before. in a CG animated show like this, and I don't think we're gonna see from the LoL universe again. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
I think that now that Riot owns part of Fortiche and they have these tools in order to do this animation style, that makes it easier, because as much as Arcane cost, it does cost less per minute for animation by far than a feature-length Pixar film, for example. So if they can continue, and how much of the investment of the money was creating the tools that can then be reused, the technology that can then be reused to create further shows, right? And also, part of the expense we know is that they greenlit season 2 before they had scripts written, which meant that a lot of people were sitting around doing nothing, waiting for the writing to finish. And that was enormously expensive, right? To have artists and animators biding their time while the concept of the show and the scripts were finished. So if you avoid some of these very expensive delays, I think it would also make it more cost efficient and reasonable. And the question too is, clearly this was a marketing exercise. Arcane in and of itself is not something that has directly generated Riot profits. But as Riot continues to release new games in the Runeterra League of Legends universe, if they have intelligent ways as they release this kind of content to funnel people into paying for the games or microtransactions, then there could be a way to make significant revenue off of this, which would justify the expense. And clearly, I think that's where Riot's mind is at, which is that this world is something that they are going to be building out for years and years and years across various mediums. And does this become, an actual feature film or something now, something that could potentially generate a lot of revenue for Riot that isn't, them making it and then Netflix paying not the full cost for the distribution rights of the show? Can this be a box office draw that could generate, a Marvel or a Pixar sized or a Disney sized revenue and be a successful enterprise in its own right? Lots of questions, right? There's many avenues, I think, to profitability for Riot in this realm, and they have many ways in which they can accomplish that. So besides, I personally don't care about them wasting a bunch of money to give us something cool.
No, they can spend all they want. I would love it if they spent this much on every episode, because it looked great. You also got to translate viewers to players and players to viewers, back and forth like that way. And, that's something that I don't know if they've done with this, but, which is kind of shocking, because we've had like the other way around all the time, where it's, well, no, we haven't. It's the same way, where even the film Surf Ninjas that we talked about on the show long ago, even that movie, even that cinematic masterpiece, did have a video game tie-in. So
that was advertised in the film.
Exactly. So if Surf Ninjas can advertise their Sega Game Gear game and get people to play it, like Surf Ninjas had better, viewer to player transfer, I think, than probably Arcane to League of Legends, because you don't need to know that Arcane is from a video game to enjoy Arcane. In fact, I think that's one of the strengths of it. But as a video game company, as Riot, is for the most part still, you'd think you'd want to use something like this to drive people towards the game. And there are Arcane tie-ins within the game, but you're already there, right? You didn't come from Arcane to experience those tie-ins,
And also, the new user experience in League of Legends is notoriously poor. Now, they are trying to do this thematically. They just announced yesterday a new League of Legends season that's going to be themed around Noxus, and they're changing the map to be Noxian, and they are introducing Noxian elements to the game, like the feats of strength. So they are trying to do this, and they've said next year they're going to have 3 seasons, the first of which is Noxus themed, and then they're going to theme the other 2 seasons next year in the ranked player experience. So, but this theming is mostly just aesthetic now, and I think it's to satisfy existing players rather than being a hand-holding method. They don't have a good new player onboarding experience, a tutorial system that eases people into the game. You're kind of just thrust into League of Legends with an established player base and 170 different champions and an overwhelming amount of information. So I do think there are some missed opportunities, but if you're Riot and you're taking the long view of this is going to feed into our MMO or other games that we're releasing, or we are going to have a standalone film business that in itself will generate money, perhaps it doesn't matter, right? Perhaps it doesn't matter.
I just want to play that MMO. Give me that MMO.
You may
I'm
never
still,
get that MMO.
I know, but if it does exist, I will be more than happy to play it. I'm just saying that right now. I'd love to play that MMO, Riot.
Well, circle your calendar from 5 years from now, because I think that's the earliest we're going to see any inkling of that.
We'll look like the elderly lady at the beginning of the Titanic, but it's been 84 years, since the MMO was announced, and we'll finally be playing it in the nursing homes. And I'll be like, finally, and then I'll die. I'll just fall over right then. But I'll die with a smile on my face because I made my
dust.
my Yordle in the GIMP class just like I always wanted. Talk about unresolved storylines. Oh, come on. Where was the community's favorite character?
GIMP Yordle or Madam Yordle?
GIMP Yordle.
Oh, GIMP Yordle. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
All right,
anyway,
let's talk about some of these.
You want to talk about the
storylines.
ending, didn't you?
Yeah, let's talk about the ending and how this is resolved.
It's been 84 years.
It's been 84 years and several alternate universes, and Viktor and Jayce going through multiple lifetimes of how to solve the issues of the Arcane. But let's start with Vi and Jinx, because that was kind of the core storyline for season 1, and at least the core storyline for the first arc of season 2. What we get is, of course, Vi and Jinx going back and forth forever, allying and then turning on each other yet again, as has been the theme throughout the entire series. So basically, Vi is off on her own, drowning her sorrows in whiskey and punching people in the fighting pits, whereas Jinx has now become this symbol of Zaunite resistance, which she is reluctant to actually lead. And eventually we get them back together over the existence of Vander as Warwick, Singed experiment into eternal life. Now, why Singed had to turn him into a monster in order to get eternal life is a mystery that we may never have resolved.
They needed to make him a wolf guy. He was like, oh, his blood can only save my daughter, but if he's a wolf man, I think.
Only the blood of the wolf man.
Come on, Singed. You just wanted to make a wolf man, and the daughter was the catalyst for that, right? I mean, we're going to talk about Jinx and Vi here, but you opened up a can of wolves with this. With the Singed, we have to talk about it now. Because we'll go back to Jinx and Vi, but Singed is basically he's the Mr. Freeze from Batman and Robin, but in League of Legends, right? Where it's like start a criminal empire. He invented, spice and all that. No, that's not spice. It's what is it called? It's Shimmer in this. He invented drugs to save his daughter, essentially, just like Mr. Freeze, portrayed wonderfully by Arnold Schwarzenegger in that film. Created a criminal empire just to try to save his wife, right? Because you get the money to create the technology. You're a tortured genius with a low ethics threshold, so you're okay doing this kind of stuff if it funds your research to save your family. So same thing, just a different character. So I gotta say, the Singed stuff, it was just Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze. Let's be honest here. I enjoyed watching all of it, but it was just straight out of Batman and Robin. Another one of my favorite films. So this didn't really bother me that much, but you got to call it like it is, Monty.
Why does anyone commit acts others deem unspeakable? For love.
I love that comparison. What was his wife's name? Nora. I believe that's in the Batman comics too. That's not just Batman and Robin.
I wasn't paying attention to that, man.
It's a core part of Mr. Freeze lore. But I mean, the parallels are obviously huge. And
what killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age. I love that movie.
Also, not true.
Take 2 of these and call me in the morning. Fantastic.
At least Singed didn't say a Singed is coming.
That's right.
So, but I mean, basically, the Warwick Vander thing is used as a method of reuniting Jinx and Vi and giving them the common thing to fight for again. This then leads them to Viktor, where they're trying to get Vander healed. Now that fails when Jayce comes in and attempts to assassinate Viktor and arguably succeeds, which then causes Vander to have to give his blood to fix Viktor so that Viktor can actually try and make the final attempt to get to the Hex Gate core in order to enact his plans, which of the glorious evolution, which we will get to in a minute. This again results in Jinx being put in jail by Caitlyn while Vi is recovering, and then Jinx pulling the old jail switcheroo and locking Vi in there. And then, of course, coming to the rescue at the end with the forces of Zaun that she has united because they all believe in her. And they are then fighting. Everybody is now together fighting Noxus and the forces of
Borg.
Of Viktor.
It's called the Borg.
The Borg, yes.
They did it in StarCraft. This is a Magic Borg, basically.
Magic Borg, yes.
Viktor and the Magic Borg. But anyway, back to Jinx and Vi. I've seen that one before somewhere. Jinx and Vi, and of course, Jinx. Oh, she's done so many terrible things. She's irredeemable and all that. Oh, but at the end, she sacrifices herself. Spoiler alert! Sacrifices herself to take out Vander and save Vi. Or does she? She definitely takes out Vander, but she's also definitely very much alive. The indicators are all over the last couple scenes of the episode. You can see the right before the explosion, or as it happens, you can see a little shimmer trail of Jinx jetting off to the upper right of the screen. And then you see Caitlyn, who suspects this, looking at the schematics and looking at the different air ducts and things on the side. So it's heavily implied, and the airship flying away. It's
and the airship at the end, which in
alive,
the first episode she said that she was going to get on someday, and it ends with that same effective shot of the airship leaving Piltover. Yeah, I agree. It's heavily implied that Jinx gets out of that situation.
You're not going to kill Jinx. Come on. If they had, she wouldn't be playable in the game. We know how Riot works. When you kill a champion in the lore, they become unplayable in the game for at least a couple of weeks.
Shout out Gangplank. By the way, DoA, you will appreciate this, but on the latest dev update, the devs themselves joked about the killing of Gangplank as a terrible idea, which it absolutely was.
That's good. I mean, you can't not poke fun of that whenever the opportunity arises, because it is one of the most ridiculous things ever done in live service games. And I mean, it was a terrible decision, but we had a lot of laughs about it, and we continue to do so. And I'm glad they agree that they deserve their gentle ribbing for it, because it was
exactly.
It was really funny. Yeah.
We also get the conclusion of the Piltover Zaun conflict arc, especially at the end, where they realize that they have to fight this greater foe. This one gets lost a little bit, I felt, in the last 6 episodes, especially when we discuss how much the Piltover Zaun and the class warfare thing was so core to the first season and also first 3 episodes of season 2 of this show. But they effectively resolve it by now we see Sevika on the council, and that there is Zaun representation on the council in Piltover. So it feels like they're getting more agency over their future. They also just bail everybody in Piltover out at the end by joining the fight, which was being very much lost, and especially Ekko's contribution towards the end. And this is this is the one that is least touched upon, but it is resolved in the fact that you do see them kind of joining the governance of Piltover at the end.
Yeah. And I do agree that I think there could have been a little bit more to that. And I think there probably should have been. And again, it's just so much stuff happening at once, you have to resolve it some way, but it did feel a little bit glossed over. I even feel like the Jinx Vi storyline was a little bit glossed over throughout, where the entire first season was very much Jinx Vi focused. Their relationship, the direct relationships of the characters connected to them, very directly. And this one was kind of we got a couple scenes of, Jinx does this thing, shenanigans, Vi is angry, Jinx shenanigans, Vi is angry. We get that kind of back and forth, but we don't get the really deep development of that relationship that we did in season 1. So, I think that's kind of by design. This isn't, the show is called Arcane. It's not called Jinx and Vi. So I do feel like
it should have been called Jinx and Vi.
Yeah, but season 2 just wasn't that. Season 2 just wasn't Jinx and Vi.
They did it wrong, DoA. It's okay. We'll get to that.
They kind of, they kind of did. They did kind of do it wrong. Where they did set it up to be a continuation of the very Jinx Vi focused storyline. That it just wasn't that. Jinx and Vi felt like kind of minor players towards the end that were then given big things to do to remind us that this is the Jinx and Vi story.
Yep.
But it really wasn't when it all comes down to it.
And these are the storylines that really propelled most of season 1 and also the start of season 2. But I mean, by the time we get to the last 6 episodes here, this show does live up to the name Arcane, and it's about Jayce and Viktor's glorious evolution. And the whole point of Hextech, which was a major thematic factor, was that Jayce and Viktor wanted this to get into the hands of the everyday people to make their lives better. And Viktor realizes from getting trapped inside the Arcane that he can do this, and having the Hex core enter him, that he can do this via magic, basically. But the price of that magic is the loss of free will, the loss of imperfection. And it all culminates, of course, with Jayce realizing that because of his own experience being trapped in the Arcane, going to try and stop Viktor. Viktor is unstoppable. Singed helps him get the Warwick blood in order to kind of recombobulate. And then Ambessa is there because she wants the power of the Machine Herald and her army to be empowered by Viktor so that she can fight Noxus and the Black Rose in particular. So they end up allying and then marching so that they can get Viktor to the Hexgate core in order to affect this. At the Hexgate core, that's when Viktor and Jayce have this conflict. And I think the ultimate resolution of this is that there is like a bunch of time skipping that happens. An older version of Viktor comes back and basically says, this was my mistake to Jayce, that, the glorious evolution is actually, the thing about perfection is that there is no progress anymore, right? Once you've kind of reached that state. And then there's a montage of him handing Jayce, like going back in time and handing him all these different runes, which produced all these different alternate universes, one can assume. But basically the outcome is exactly the same. So therefore he says he himself must be stopped. And current Viktor, who has been, has his humanity revealed by the explosion from Ekko's Z drive, sees this and realizes it. And basically him and Viktor and Jayce get, we assume, absorbed into the Arcane, and they stop with the Borgification, the magic Borgification of all the people of Piltover.
In all timelines, in all possibilities, only you can show me this.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. And I think I feel like you do need to do some thinking about this to really kind of like pick up on everything, where I did like sort of the way that the magic of this universe was sort of a major, plot element of it, where, how is sentient life supposed to interact with the Arcane, with the magic fabric of the universe, and obviously Viktor's intention to make everything better for everyone ended up sort of like perverting that, in a way where, to use it to just have ultimate ultimate perfection and control, but ultimate agreement between all sentient beings means, just nothing really happens, right? So it ends up being a negative, right? It ends up being like the Borg, where the Borg is just a big collective hive mind and they just want everyone to be part of the Borg. And, are they necessarily evil? Not really. They just think this is the best way for sentient life to be, and they just are going to make everybody that way, So it is kind of the same concept there. And it's the same sort of frightening element to that too, where it's like, there isn't necessarily malicious intent behind this, It's just it's misguided from the perspective of most other sentient life,
This conflict, humanity's self-corrupting contradiction.
But you were never broken, Viktor. There is beauty in imperfections.
And so that there's this faction of mages, basically, which is represented in the show by the Black Rose, that wants to, keep the use of magic the way that it's been being used, and then their conflict sort of with the, Ambessa's family. It all went together very interestingly, but I think you really need to kind of think about it and dig into it a little bit to get that. I don't know if that all came through very easily in this show, and again, I think about this too, and sure, Mark Merrill's come out and said it was never supposed to be 5 seasons, which contradicts what that Variety article said. So who knows, right? But I sure wish it was more than 2 seasons, because I think you could have told this story in a more satisfying way really diving into this stuff that I'm talking about, in at least one more season. So I think it was, okay. Again, it was good, but I think it could have been much better if we had given a little bit more time to everything to be fleshed out. But
Right.
I did like those concepts. I really like those concepts. And honestly, the show, especially the way that the universe and magic and all that worked, really made me like a fan of the League of Legends universe in a way that I haven't been before. Like, I want to go and like do more research into it now, and learn more about that. I think it's really cool. And it did. I'm going to bring up the MMO again. It made me more excited to play the MMO and kind of be in that world, So again, please make the MMO.
Yeah, and this becomes, the Hextech narrative and the Arcane narrative becomes the major part of the show. But the Arcane is never really explained in a satisfactory manner. And you're even, you basically are forced to interpret what is going on with Viktor and Jayce at the end, where there's all the flashbacks of him and the rune changing as it's being handed to Jayce. Right, to show that there were all these different outcomes that Viktor was playing with to see if there was a future where the glorious evolution would actually make sense and be successful. And this also explains the alternate universe that we see in episode 7, where Vi died. You get the sense that the rune that was given to him maybe was more powerful or something, caused a bigger explosion, which killed Vi. And then perhaps the Hextech research was stopped at that point. So it was the world where Hextech never existed, right? That we saw Heimerdinger and Ekko go to in episode 7. So you are kind of left to put the pieces together yourself, and it is left very ambiguous, which again, I don't hate, but like, I feel like there was a lot more there that we could have gotten, especially with the show called Arcane. You really are left wondering what the Arcane is, which I feel like is a question that should be answered in a show whose title is Arcane.
So I will tell you my theory on all this. So what I think the Arcane is essentially is the magic element of the universe. So basically this force that can be tapped into in multiple different ways. One of the ways is just innately, you're just born with the ability, which, we see in Mel, we see in like the other members of the Black Rose and all that. So some people are just born with the ability to tap into this. Other people, regular people, can use runes to imbue magical properties to objects. And that seems to be the other main way to tap into the Arcane, whether it's making, armor that's stronger, or in the sort of extreme end of that, technological implication of or interaction with magic with the Arcane is Hextech, right? Where you're creating, mechanical devices that are rune powered, right? But we also see the Arcane used in like Mbessa's like arm thing that she takes off the spear of, I forget the guy's name for some reason, but Rictus, right? Her first officer or second in command or whatever that dies. So that's my best sort of like explanation of what the Arcane is either you're born with the ability to just tap into it, or you access the power through runes that you inscribe on objects.
Yeah, I just wish there was more about the corruption of the Arcane, because that is just never really explained. Right. We are told very specifically that there is some sort of crisis with the Hex Gates that is creating this corruption of the Arcane. But we don't really ever get into what that is or why it's happening. Like, that's just left dangling for the entirety of the show.
My impression with that was that if the Arcane is, caused to be too structured or too locked down, it starts to just rebel in some sort of way. So the Arcane is also it's indicated that the Arcane is also this force that has a will of some sort, and so Hextech was restricting the will of the wild magic in a sense, to the point that it was causing this breakdown of how magic worked, right? So that's the impression I got, which is another interesting element to it. I thought that was
sure.
Cool.
I agree with that. I just think this storyline needed more time to be explored and to breathe.
You need to be really interested in universe building and all that kind of stuff, like I am, to really kind of think about it. I don't think the average viewer is going to put that much thought into it.
Yeah, and it does need more time than, all of this was just really jammed in the final 6 episodes, and it took center stage over what the previous 12 episodes I think were really driving at, right? I wish that. Well, we'll get into that in a minute. The other story that was not very well resolved, in my opinion, was the whole Black Rose Medarda Noxus storyline that includes LeBlanc now, who is the deceiver mage that we know is running the Black Rose, or is a central figure within the Black Rose, and the idea that basically the reveals that were given to us, which is Mel. So Mel is actually going to be allegedly a champion in League of Legends next year. So Mel
gotta
Medarda,
be now. Yeah.
Well, they never made Silco one, but there have been leaks that have said that Mel Medarda.
What is he going to do? Walk around and say smart things at people? Not everyone can be a champion, Monty.
I just want to be a champion in the game, though. That's to my desire.
You were in TFT. That's good enough.
But anyway, so Mel Medarda is revealed as being the child of what we assume is some sort of illicit relationship that Ambessa had with a mage. And she was trying to hide this child, which is probably part of the reason why Mel was sent to Piltover in the first place. Her brother Kino was hunted down and killed by the Black Rose. It is never explained why the Black Rose cares so much about finding this mage child, possibly to train her as another agent of the Black Rose. That's kind of implied by the things that LeBlanc is saying during some of these sequences. But why they are so pissed off at Ambessa is never really explained. What exactly happened with Kino? Was Kino trying to hide the truth? This is Mel's brother. Was Kino suspected of being the child that was the mage? And when they found out that wasn't true, how did he die? We don't really understand that. Why are they so obsessed with hunting Ambessa down? And this is really important because Ambessa, her entire character motivation is to first get the Hextech weapons to fight the Black Rose and to fight her enemies in Noxus, and then to use Viktor to fight her enemies in Noxus. So I feel like this one is like very deeply unsatisfying in the way that it is resolved.
Well, what I really didn't get is how Ambessa thought that her alliance with Viktor was going to benefit her, because Viktor wasn't really shy about saying, hey, I'm going to make everybody into like Arcane people and we're all going to be perfect and happy.
Stupid, DoA.
Like what did she think she was going to like eventually fight him and then take him out? And then, was it there going to be like this betrayal in there? So Ambessa seemed kind of short-sighted in her desire to want to work with Viktor, and I'm like, I don't get this part.
The worst writing at the end of Arcane is by far Ambessa's character arc, DoA, because Ambessa is shown to us. Ambessa is shown to us throughout the show as being incredibly long-sighted, incredibly deliberate about her choices. And what does she prize more than anything? Loyalty. That's literally what she makes Singed pledge to her.
Your weapons will be mine. In return, I will supply all your needs. You will be treated as an esteemed advisor, but I demand absolute loyalty.
She is interested in loyalty from her officers. Her mindset is incredibly militaristic around there is a chain of command, and that loyalty is the most important thing. The loyalty of her family to her, and that's one of the complaints she has with Mel, is that Mel is not loyal to the Medarda family. And so why would she, even in a moment of desperation, and she herself makes comments as desperation is what, the door to oblivion, or whatever she says.
Desperation is the doorway to oblivion, child.
So she understands the dangers of desperation, and she has carefully basically orchestrated this entire conflict between Piltover and Zaun in an attempt to get Hextech weapons developed and then take them for her own fight. She is so patient. And if loyalty is her main driver of people that she works with, why would she instantly, on a dime, turn to Viktor, who is creating an army of machine sycophants, basically mind-controlled people who, by the way, their goal appears to be peace by any reasonable assertion, because that is literally the peaceful commune that she comes in on when she first encounters Viktor. So if she wants to weaponize these people, why would she assume that once Viktor gets control, that she wouldn't be mind controlled, that her forces that she's trying to get wouldn't be mind controlled, that these soldiers wouldn't just lay down their arms and live a peaceful existence controlled by Viktor as part of the hive mind? And there is literally no guarantee that Viktor would be loyal to her or her aims. So it is frankly very bad writing from Ambessa's character, because I really like Ambessa's character, and I think she has a lot of redeeming qualities, and I think her motives are incredibly interesting, but she just completely gets washed over in the end, and she does things that I just don't believe her character would do, and she makes decisions that I don't believe her character would make.
Yeah, I 100% wholeheartedly agree. Her character definitely fell apart quite a bit towards the end, where I didn't get it all. I didn't get why she'd want to work with Viktor. My only thought was that this is another symptom of trying to cram a bunch of stuff together, where it's like, okay, well, we want to have our big giant battle at the end, and so we need to kind of like put people on different sides, and I guess this was how we can sort of get these things together. But one of the things that I didn't like about the ending of this too is that it went back to the old trope of, and the Marvel movies did this so many times, of let's have our heroes fight an army of exactly the same looking monsters that they can just take out left and right, and it's okay, it's fine. It's just boring, so when you're fighting Viktor's, perfect mannequin army, the mannequin magic Borgs, I was just like, all right, can we just fast forward through this part here? Sure, yeah, they look kind of cool, but it's like the same thing. It's the same thing as like Age of Ultron, and it's the same thing with all the dudes at the end of Avengers 1. It's your typical. It goes back to Stormtroopers, right? The original, one of the original ones is Stormtroopers, or the aliens from Starship Troopers. Anything where every single enemy looks the same. It's just waves of same enemies. That feels video gamey in a bad way. I think you can do a more interesting big battle kind of thing. At least in Star Wars, I shouldn't even say Stormtroopers, because at least those were different people inside the suits, right?
Well,
the Avengers movies are a much better comparison.
Here's a hot take for you that lends even more ammunition to your cause about the fights at the end of this show. So remember how they had to retcon the summoner lore in League of Legends because it was incredibly stupid, and the first lore. Wait for it, though. The first lore was that you, the player, were a summoner who was possessing a champion to fight in League of Legends. And obviously, this creates very big problems for stories, because a faceless dude in a hood who's a gamer controlling somebody means that the character that is in the world that is being controlled has no individual agency, and so therefore cannot have motives and cannot have a personality. And so they basically just sabotage their own lore. And yet, DoA, what did they have Viktor do? He was a summoner in the ether who was possessing faceless mannequins. They literally just remade the summoner lore, which I'm sure that was a ref.
That feels intentional, I had those same thoughts too. Where it's like,
let's make it. Let's do the shit again, even though we know it's bad.
I think maybe that was meant to be a reference to the original Summoners thing. I don't think it was a good idea, but I do wonder if that was the case, that maybe this was, because I had that same thought. I wonder if that was referencing, the players used to be summoners. Do we need that in the story? No, we don't. It was, it was fine the way the storytelling was going otherwise, but we needed this show went very Marvel in a bad way towards the end, where lots of punchy fights, lots of fighting big same looking enemies, or waves of same looking enemies. It did get a little bit derivative and samey at the end. Yeah.
It's also that the fights previously in Arcane were wonderful because they served to actually flesh out the characters' stories. Right. Yeah. And they serve to have these really big emotional moments. And it is just completely lacking at the end of this show, because the scale of it goes so far beyond the individual characters, because it is this giant epic battle that you don't feel, it didn't make me feel the same stakes or feel the same emotional resonance as I had with fights earlier in the series.
Well, it's because like Vi and Jinx kind of become superheroes. Like one of the things that was interesting about season 1 was that the characters felt very mortal, right? They felt like they could die just as easily as anyone else. You could get shot and just be dead, right? in this series, we've got Jinx getting punched by a giant werewolf multiple times, people slamming into walls and all this kind of stuff that would just straight up kill or paralyze any regular person, and would have, I think, straight up killed or paralyzed the Jinx and Vi from season 1. Now they're kind of given sort of superhuman durability and strength, and it becomes, again, cartoony, marvelly in a negative way, where, like you said, there's no stakes, right? Where now when a character dies, they're going to come back in some way. Side characters are never safe in the show. That's for sure. Even children. But the main characters get a little bit too superhero-y for me. Let them be mortal. Let them feel genuine and human, and then you have those stakes that I feel like season 1 had, and season 1 kind of lost towards the end.
And that's what was great about Silco, was at the end Silco just gets shot and dies, right?
Yeah.
Or Vander dies to the bomb that occurs. It's like, I agree, that's a really good point, that it is the mortality of the characters that makes the show interesting. Sure, it's still larger than life, you have these superhuman abilities, but it doesn't go full bore into essential immortality, or some Deus Ex Machina to bring the characters back, like especially Vander / Warwick. I mean, he gets shot with the super hex core gun that is overloaded, and he just comes back as a machine guy, as a machine wolf.
Now, I'm not saying either that you need to kill main characters all the time. That's not what I'm advocating either. I'm just saying make us worry for them. Make them seem vulnerable, right? And all of our main characters just seemed invulnerable at the end, And they had a couple things happen. Sure, Caitlyn loses an eye. People, quote unquote, die, but they don't really die. That kind of stuff. Or they die in like an alternate universe scene, and so it's give us that same feeling of mortality is all I'm asking. And I'm not saying either that I don't like things being done on an epic scale. I like the idea of the entire fabric of this universe being in jeopardy, right? The Arcane itself being in jeopardy. I like that we can build up to that, but we needed more time to build up to that. The big battle that happened at the end of season 2 felt like something that should have happened at the end of like a future season, right?
Yes.
Where this was something that builds up, so you have a big payoff. I just finished watching the Marineford arc in the One Piece anime, which came out years ago, obviously. But if you've watched it, you understand what I'm talking about, where this big battle between the Marines and the pirates, right? And the pirates that are involved, the Marines, the admirals that are involved, one of the 4 emperors is there, and Whitebeard. Like they build this fight up for literally like 100 episodes. They seriously hype it up that long and build it up that long, and then when it does happen, it does deliver, and it is massive and epic and huge in scale, and it really works. And they do still have, in that, if you've watched it, in One Piece, they do still have very important individual character moments that happen in that arc, but all the other stuff can be big and epic because it's been properly built up to. I think that's a great example of how you do that type of storytelling right.
The scope widens much too quickly in Arcane. I agree. Like it goes from, this is the fundamental problem with why I said earlier, and I maintain that even though the show is called Arcane, it should not have had much to do with the Arcane in this show outside of the development of Hextech. All of the existential problems of the Arcane should have been, I think, hinted at in this show, but I think we should have saved all of that storyline for an entirely separate sequel to this show, because at its core, what made season 1 so good was the human scale of this, right? The most compelling storylines were Vi and Jinx being sisters and their separation, and the death of Vander, who was their surrogate father, right? And then you have the introduction of the Piltover Zaun conflict, which is a class conflict, and who is able to dictate their own future. Is Zaun going to be able to be given the power of self-determination? I really like how the idea that Zaun was in rebellion or is attacking Piltover in some way then puts Caitlyn into this dictator role, or this military control role, where she is trying to stamp that out. And then you have Vi's obviously split loyalties to Zaun and then to her Caitlyn, whom she has a romantic interest in, and the idea of Piltover, or the idea of a combined kind of governance of both cities, right? And they even, I think, symbolically represent through Vi's coat, right? She has the inside Vi, there are two wolves meme going on with the double-headed wolf on the back of her pit fighter jacket.
On the nose there a bit.
Yes. Inside Vi, there are two wolves. And one of the wolves is obviously her native land of Zaun and her loyalties to her sister, as well as her personal goals and ambitions and her, love of Caitlyn and the desire to have this relationship and heal the wounds between Zaun and Piltover. That's the interpretation that I took from it, at least. And to me, these are the core stories that were set up in Arcane. And frankly, they're the more interesting stories to me, because when you rush through all of the Arcane Viktor and Jayce stuff and the Glorious Evolution, it loses sight of all of these things that you've set up, and it leads to a really, I think, unsatisfying conclusion, because the only thing we get is like, oh, I guess Zaun has representation on the council now. There's no voyage to getting there, right?
Yeah.
And even though Jinx at the end shows up with the forces of Zaun, we don't get the scene where Jinx is the one who is in Zaun, accepting the fact that she's become a symbol of the freedom of Zaun and rallying the people herself, which I think would be a very compelling scene, right? Because she basically very deliberately is shown not doing that thing, not showing up to be the leader and the symbol the people of Zaun want her to be. And we don't get where she changes her mind and she does take on that mantle and she does become the larger than life personality and the hero. And she does come back and help heal the wounds between Zaun and Piltover, right? I think
showing up on a hot air balloon enough for you, Monty.
I just think there a lot was left emotionally unsatisfied, and even though they technically addressed this with the council scene in the epilogue, it really just didn't feel like we had the natural resolution of this. And even though they did in episode 7 also show, and I think this was critical, what Zaun could have been and what Jinx could have been without being critically injured, without getting the shimmer, which made her probably go more crazy, as we come to understand, without the Silco intervention, without her own emotional trauma that was a result of her being directly responsible for the death of Vander and her estrangement from Vi. We get that. And I think that is, and showing how Zaun could be if Vander had stayed alive is all really interesting. And I just wish it had been more of that to end the series rather than basically sublimating that entire plot to rush through the Jayce Viktor Arcane plot.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the whole, and then there were little things here and there where it's like, oh, we got one last little betrayal where it's like Caitlyn's friends with benefits decided to betray her to Ambessa at the end, and it's like, wait, really? I mean, like, I know she would be mad. Who wouldn't be mad, right? If your current partner got together with their old ex, right? That pissed me off too. Would it make me upset enough to betray that person to death? Probably not. Most adults would kind of just be sad and move on. But this person was very angry apparently. But just one last little thing where it's like, oh, yet another little surprise betrayal thing. I'm like, we could have gotten there, without yet another surprise, right? It all added to a feeling that I get with the newer Marvel stuff, which is a very generic way to go about doing things. It didn't feel Arcane season 1 felt very new, and unique, and kind of bold in that it was so character driven instead of plot driven. Season 2 was still good, but it started to stray down that road that that Marvel did. I'm just going to keep using Marvel as an example because they've committed this cardinal sin of storytelling infinity times at this point, infinity stone times at this point. So yeah, I got it right the second time. So I hate seeing it go that direction. That said, again, I think the ending, I think the way they wrapped everything up was decent. I thought it was good. It was okay, but it could have been so much better. I think the irritation I feel is for what could have been. We were this close to perfection, as Krennic says in Rogue One, another great movie that Monty doesn't like.
I think it's mid. It's not that I don't like it. I think it's just thoroughly mid.
Just like the ending of this. I think the ending of this is it's on the good side of mid, but it does become a bit mid.
Yeah. I think it went from being great to being like good but not great, and I think that's my problem. And like there are ways that this could be fixed with additional content, and Christian Link, who's the executive producer, is the showrunner on this show, has said that they are working on, by the way, this has been misinterpreted if you've seen this, where some sites have picked up he was on a stream talking about Arcane with Necrit, who is a League of Legends lore enthusiast. They invited him to Riot HQ, and then he did an interview with Christian Link there. And what Christian said or implied, and this was later cleared up by Riot also, which is that people interpreted what Christian said as they are working on 3 new shows, one in Demacia, one in Noxus, and one in Ionia, which are different parts of Runeterra, the League of Legends universe. What they have since clarified, and I don't think this was specifically said by Christian if you watch the actual content, is more that they are working on projects, whether they are games or maybe mini series or maybe even complete shows again, but they are working on story content that is set in these 3 areas. It's obviously still very early on in development. I don't think we're going to see this for another couple of years, but those are the focuses. They're trying to broaden it out, but they haven't specifically said what mediums these story explorations will take place in, just for clarity. But they are clearly like very much driving towards these projects in Demacia, in Noxus, and in Ionia.
Well, I'd love to see just Arcane continued. I mean, just keep using the name Arcane. Like, you've expanded it to the point that it's really not about Jinx and Vi anymore. Just embrace that. Just have Arcane be Arcane. Make a season 3 at some point, and be okay with just moving away from the Jinx and Vi storyline. They can show up at some point in the future when it makes sense for their characters to show up. But for now, show us what Swain is up to, right? He was there at the end of the season as the crow with the raven with a bunch of eyes poking in the hammer, trying to get a little bit of technology, flying off with the ships of Noxus. It's Swain. Swain is one of my favorite characters to play in the game. It has been for a long time. So I was excited to see Swain there at the end there. I believe that it's Swain. Yes. No one's going to be able to convince me otherwise.
It's
so let's go with that. We had the little Oriana reveal at the end, as well, where Singe was there with her. You got a little ballerina thing and all that, and so that would be cool. I want to see what's going on with that. So I really liked a lot of the little tidbits there. I'm sure I probably didn't hit all of them. If you've got any others, let me know.
Oh, I do.
But well, let's hear about it. But I want to see stuff to do with that. What stuff did you notice? Those are a couple things that I noticed.
So we will do a little bit some more of these Easter eggs. But first, guys, one of our sponsors on this show is, of course, Mando, and they are a men's soap and deodorant company, and you can actually try them out with a starter pack with our code on this show. They sell not only bar soap, body wash, stick deodorant, but also cream tube deodorant, which is like a lotion that you can rub in anywhere, that I've actually been using more than anything. I really enjoy this. They also have deodorant wipes. So if you need a quick freshen up, if you're camping, or if you've just been out for a long day and you need to freshen up before you go to perhaps dinner or another activity, it provides you a really easy way just to wipe down quickly. And it's not antiperspirant. None of this stuff is antiperspirant. It doesn't reduce or prevent sweat. It actually just prevents body odor from forming with mandelic acid in advance. Comes in a variety of very manly scents like bourbon leather or clover woods. And Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. Or you can get some last minute stocking stuffers. Comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like a mini body wash or deodorant wipes, and free shipping. We have a code to help you get hooked on our favorite smelling whole body deodorant on the market. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use code NERD, N-E-R-D, at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Support our show. This is the best way to support our show, is to support our sponsor. So if you love Nerd Legion, use code NERD at shopmando.com. So there you go.
I bought a new leather belt the other day, Monty, and I sniffed it. and I was like, it's got a nice manly leather scent, but it's not quite as good as bourbon leather. I gotta
Right.
admit, I'm judging all of the manly things, the manly objects and substances in my life against the scent of Mando now at this point.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. So yeah, basically, with some of the Easter eggs, like you said, Swain is implied via the six-eyed raven coming in at the end, which they show it with one eye, and then it just like opens up the other two eyes on the side. Swain.
I was like Leonardo DiCaprio on that GIF when that happened. I was like, oh, it's him.
So Swain is a Noxian general who's possessed by a demon. He's one of the playable characters in League of Legends. As you say, Orianna. Now, we wondered, this is an entire rewriting of Orianna's lore, as I understand it, where she was basically, it's implied she was revived by Viktor, and she somehow survives the machine person apocalypse that happens at the very end. And so she is conscious now, even though she's been machinified by Viktor. So that's another champion backstory that they could add on to. There's some other just like fun little nods to the game in this that I noticed. One of them is that there was a new item that was released this year in League of Legends called Kaenic Rookern, and that's actually the item that Rictus has, which is the series of metal runes on the chain. So if you look at the item within the item picture within the game, it looks like that. And then we see Ambessa take that later on. And what the item does is it provides a magic shield. It's a tank item that provides a magic shield, which is exactly what Kaenic Rookern is blocking. Because remember, Hextech would be considered magic damage in League of Legends. And so Caitlyn's Hextech rifle blocks that shot at the end, as well as blocking Mel's power. And it's when you see Caitlyn kind of slash it off her that she becomes vulnerable to the magic, and it gets captured by LeBlanc and taken into the Black Rose alternate dimension, right? So I thought that was a fun nod. Also, obviously, Ekko's ultimate on the 4-second timer was really cute when he and Heimerdinger create the Z drive in the alternate universe, and he realizes he can only go back in time 4 seconds before things get really messed up.
Four.
The limit is 4 seconds.
Obviously, in the game League of Legends, Ekko has the shadow running behind him, which is 4 seconds behind him in movement. And if he snaps back to that, he does a huge amount of damage in that area. So it explains that. Ekko also got the bat that he uses at the very end. It was floating, and then he grabs it because he didn't have his signature bat weapon throughout this entire show, but he grabs it. He has it for the final showdown where he basically succeeds in stopping Viktor, or getting Viktor to realize his humanity through the damage he causes from the explosion of the Z drive. So these are all just fun little Easter eggs that relate to the game of League of Legends.
Did you notice the esports one?
Oh yes, on the wheel.
There was a wheel that had a bunch of runes on it, but if you look closely, they're all logos of League of Legends esports teams. So I thought that was a nice little.
It was also the teams at Worlds in 2022. So it was probably they made that decision pretty early on in the development of the second season. But yeah, so the esports Easter egg was also very fun. Also, just kind of generally in the final battle, we had the blue forces of Piltover versus the red forces of Noxus, which is very iconic of the minions, of the blue versus red team marching at each other, especially with the towers of Piltover in the background. It felt like, the laning phase in League of Legends, with the extras being the little minions.
Only way more exciting than the real laning phase, we'll say, in my opinion. Where's Blitzcrank, though? My 100% actual favorite character in League of Legends, Blitzcrank.
So I think what is interesting about this, and a lot of people are complaining that this retcons a lot of the lore, because we obviously, without Hextech, how could we have Camille as a character? And the implication is that the existence of Hextech is deleted by Viktor and Jayce going back in time, right? Or it at least is no longer functional. So if we haven't introduced these characters already who depend on Hextech. So there is a lot of complaints about people that this is retconning the lore. And to this, DoA, I say fucking good, because League of Legends lore is terrible. And this is way better, guys. you have to understand where League of Legends lore came from, okay? And League of Legends lore was always super scuffed, not only because of the summoner thing, but because they were releasing characters in 2013 and 2014 every 2 weeks. And these were not very well fleshed out characters, guys. They literally were like, oh God, how do we get to the next sci-fi and fantasy trope as quickly as possible? What haven't we done yet? Oh, we haven't done Alien versus Predator.
Yeah, I knew you were going to go to that.
it's Kazakhs and Rengar. Get him out. We need a Chinese guy. Okay, like a Chinese guy with sword. And Wukong. Yeah, get Sun Wukong from Journey to the West in there. And oh shit, we need a fantasy guy with a sword. Here's Garen. Like, these are not well thought out. They're very tropey, these characters, and it was haphazard, the release of these champions when they were there. In fact, here's my hot take, DoA. I think Arcane could have been a better show if they literally took all the people that worked on Arcane and did it not in the League of Legends universe, because they could have written a good story that wasn't hampered by all of this bullshit that they put out previously.
Maybe.
Yeah, League of Legends is kind of hemmed in, and I think this is about as good as you can do, which is good, by the way, within the League of Legends universe.
Of course.
But I want to see this creative team do something where they don't have to be hampered by the existing IP of League of Legends, which is always going to be inherently weak because of the way that it was created in the first place. And you can upgrade it, but there's only, I think, so far the upgrades can go. And I think that they could create something even better if given, their own devices. But we'll see. Anyway, this is all to say that a lot of these characters getting rewritten or their concepts turned on their heads is good, because a lot of this lore comes from a time where the lore was trash. And this is way better. And it's also just much more, my point is, it's much more considered when you're making this very in-depth, long-form show, rather than we have 2 weeks to get a new champion out, get it out as fast as possible.
Yeah, like, I mean, as far as the lore goes, I agree. I mean, the original lore was sort of utilitarian. It was made for the purpose of getting the champion out. I think this show and all the content that comes around it is a great opportunity to firm up the lore, and clean it up and create kind of new stories where the characters are involved in a more interesting way. So yeah, I'm totally fine with them changing whatever they feel like changing for the show versus the game. Like, yeah, who cares? Change whatever you want.
A lot better
it's
in the
better.
end.
It's better this way, There's nothing as fun and zany and wacky as the old League of Legends lore was. There was a lot of fun, zany, wacky stuff in it. It is better this way. Yeah.
And I will make, here's another hot take for you. I will use this as an example. League of Legends lore was always created very tonally haphazardly, and that comes across nowhere better in this show than Heimerdinger, who I think is terrible in Arcane. I think he's absolutely off. Yes.
Come on.
I think he is crap.
He's fine.
I think he's crap comedy relief. I think he doesn't fit in tonally with the serious nature or themes of this show. And he's used kind of for like cheap laughs. And nowhere is this embodied better than in episode 7, DoA, when Heimerdinger does the banjo song that is easily by a enormous margin the worst piece of music in a show that is very solid in terms of its music and very focused around its music.
Oh, just let the gears, my friend, let them turn. Thank you very much.
And this introduction, and I'm somebody who loves bluegrass and banjo music, so it's not the fact that it's a banjo, guys. It's that the song itself is crap. It's that it's cheesy and it has this goofy Heimerdinger voice actor singing it, and that he himself is just this comic relief that even when serious things happen to him, like Jayce betraying him and ejecting him from the council, he's just happy-go-lucky and he's just going to live his life in another dimension. And I think he is terrible. And this is an artifact of League of Legends lore, because it's not all Yordles, because Smeech is obviously awesome as the Chem Baron. I think fits in super well with the rest of the universe. So it's not even Yordles. It's just Heimerdinger himself is this glaringly obvious kind of he's outside of every other character and theme and tone in Arcane, and he just is so obviously tacked on in this super weird way in this show, and I fucking hate him.
you don't, you don't like Songer Donger? Come on, But anyway, he, it's, I just don't care. Like I think he was more fun in season 1 where he seemed to kind of play a purpose. I think they just didn't have anything for him to do in season 2, so they just kind of had him be around and do stuff. He was certainly no Kermit the Frog doing Rainbow Connection, that's for sure. But like it didn't bother me per se. I think it's fine having a character be goofy and there for kind of comic relief and maybe immune to some of the trauma and tragedy of the world and the other characters, because so much of the show is just personal trauma after personal trauma. Oh, now things are starting to get good, but then trauma. So it's kind of nice in a way to have a character that seems to be inexplicably kind of immune to that. So I think tonally he provides a little bit of a palate cleanser between lots of dark stuff, that happens. So for me, it didn't bother me. I felt like it worked, but I can see how it would bother you. That's all I'll say.
Hybriding is sex, man.
Monty does not want to raise the dongers. It's official.
I just think, man, like especially that musical sequence was just so janky in the context of every other musical sequence in Arcane. It just felt it was a scene half-baked.
It was a scene where I was like, shouldn't we be spending this time kind of telling the stories we've got to kind of get done before the end of the season?
Right.
But there was that thought in the back of my head, I will admit, but it didn't bother me a terrible amount.
I hate it. Anyway, I hate it here.
That's great.
So there are a couple other things that I want to discuss before, especially on the sound front. And I will say that one of the aspects that I haven't seen discussed as much about Arcane is the excellence of the sound in the show, the sound effects, the sound mixing, the way the music is used, because purely from the auditory experience, and if you have not been watching Arcane with a good sound system or headphones, honestly, you are missing out. Go back and watch the final fight scene with headphones on and listen to how balanced the sound is, how amazing the kind of spatial audioscape is with all of the sound effects coming through, the mixing between the voice levels and the sound levels, the dynamic range. Arcane may be the best sounding TV show I have ever heard. It is nuts how much work went into the sound design and the balance of all of the different sound effects within this show.
Yeah, I love it. We talked about the music a lot too, but and the music certainly stands out. But like you said, the sound effects and the ambience of it. I wore I wore headphones for the entire thing. I listened to the entire thing with headphones, mostly because just in my home workspace and all that, if I listen to it on speakers, my toddler will constantly want to come into the room and see what I'm doing. But also, like, once I started, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to watch the rest of this in headphones. And I even did when I didn't need to, because it sounds that good. So, really credit to the people working on the audio and the sound in the show. It was definitely awesome. Yeah. I mean, technically the show is just flawless. It's great.
Yeah. And that leads us into, of course, our other sponsor on this show, which I listen to on these Turtle Beach wireless Stealth 700 Gen 3s.
Me too. What a coincidence. I also did. And I know we're advertising these headsets right now, but I didn't just wear the headphones for the bit, right? I actually wore the headphones because it does sound that good. So they definitely delivered in that category.
Yeah, Turtle Beach, obviously known for the quality of their audio. You guys can look up many reviews of the new Stealth 700 Gen 3s. These are the brand new ones that they just released. You'll notice the reviews are all glowing. Turtle Beach has always been known for their sound quality. You may be wondering, well, guys, why aren't you wearing them right now? First off, this is also a Turtle Beach headset. This is the Atlas Air. And second off, because We need wired options when we're doing podcasts for what's called side tone, which allow us to hear our own voices in our headsets. I use wireless options every other time I'm listening to stuff on my PC, guys, or I'm gaming for the most part. It's just for these shows. These are awesome, though. I've been using them constantly. I did watch the last couple episodes on Arcane on these. It sounded amazing. They're very good in terms of spatial audio, especially because they're made for gaming, which also makes them very good for listening to these battle sequences in Arcane. Not only that, but what's so cool, I think, about these in terms of the technology is that the Stealth 700s come with 2 wireless receivers, which means I have one in my PC and I have one in my PlayStation. And all you have to do is hit a single button to change the transceivers, which means you don't have to screw around with moving the receivers from one your console to another one. You can use them in 2 consoles at the same time if you've got that. So it really is just a very flexible option where one button push will just flip it. And you can go enjoy another piece of media. You put it in your laptop and your PC, whatever you guys want. It also has Bluetooth options, so you can connect via Bluetooth. And even better, DoA, you can connect to Bluetooth and the wireless receiver simultaneously, which means, say, you're playing on your console and you're listening to our podcast, Nerd Legion, on your phone. Well, you can do both of those things at the same time. And
I was surprised by that. That was interesting.
While you do that, they have different volume wheels for Bluetooth and the wireless, so you can create your own mix of levels in your own headset, whether you're on a Discord call while you're playing games, having a phone call, whatever you want. You can just create a mix of your own, listening to music off your phone while you're playing your Xbox. These are all options. So it is a really, really cool piece of technology. It works wonderfully well. Sound quality is insane. And it's just great piece of tech that we absolutely recommend to you guys. And we can give you a little bit of a discount. They also last for 80 hours, 80 hours of battery life. So you basically never need to charge them. And if they happen to run down, there's a quick charge function where you can get them back online super, super quickly. So you can get the ultimate immersive gaming experience with Turtle Beach today for a limited time only. Head to turtlebeach.com and use code NL. That stands for Nerd Legion, obviously, for 10% off your entire order. That's 10% off your order at turtlebeach.com with promo code NL. Don't delay. Get the perfect gift now. Of course, if you're shopping for the holidays. Not only that, here's their Cone 2 Air mouse. This thing rules if you have bigger hands. Love it. They have keyboards. They have fight sticks. They have controllers. They have flight sticks. They have racing sim stuff. So tons of great peripherals from Turtle Beach, and it'll be 10% off your whole order. So thanks.
I'll give you a thumbs up too. 2 thumbs up from me. Yeah. Monty, I had one more Easter egg that I bet you didn't notice that I haven't seen pop up on any of the sites yet that have been talking about Easter eggs. I have one more. Is that when when we go by some guards in the prison, they're playing a game. They're playing a game on the table. And it's a game of Tellstones, which is a physical board game that Riot released, which is you have 5 smooth stones. It's a memory game that you play. It's a 1 versus 1 game that you flip over and you try to remember which ones is. And it's great, actually. It's a fantastic little 2-player game. Go find a copy. I don't know who sells it anywhere yet anymore, but Riot made this little, the box is about this big, and it's got 5 game pieces and a couple little counters to count like points. And it is just the greatest little fun memory game that you and someone else can play. I bring it along all the time when my wife and I go camping to play against each other in the tent and all that. And so as a Tellstones fan, I was happy to see that in the game too, because in the Tellstones set that you can get from Riot, they have, I want to say it's Ionia that are the it's called Tellstone's King's Gambit, by the way. But I want to say the runes on it, the markings on it, are from Ionia. I could be wrong, but they say in the lore, in the game rules, that each nation and continent and city-state, whatever around the League of Legends universe has their own symbols for their pieces, implying, I think, that they would eventually go on to sell other sets, which I don't know if they ever did. I don't think they ever did. But that was kind of cool because you saw Tellstones pieces, but they had different symbols on them than the ones you can get because, of course, they would have the Piltover symbols in Piltover. So I thought that was a really neat little include because I feel like that game is so underrated. It's such a great little board game. Tellstone King's Gambit is what it's called. You can still
I see it on the
Riot
Riot Games store.
Yeah, you can still buy it on the Riot site. So you should, because it's a great little board game.
Yeah, I noticed that as well, Doe, and I thought you might bring that up in the episode, because I noticed the symbols, and I was like, oh, I remember playing that game with DoA. So I agree, that was there are a lot. I mean, there are obviously far more Easter eggs than we're going to get to on this show. Everybody, it's very much designed with love for League of Legends and the broader universe that they've created. I will bring up a final topic for us.
Demacia, not Ionia.
No, it's Demacia, not Ionia. Yeah. But in any case, Doa, I'm going to bring up a final topic for us, which is that the showrunner Christian Link said that there is a extended version of the sex scene between Vi and Caitlyn that took place that they had to edit down.
I did not know that
show because it was too erotic. So what I am demanding from Riot Games is to please release the scissor cut of the Vi Caitlyn sex scene. We now know it exists. Release the scissor cut. The people demand it.
You know, where Blizzard is out there trying to shut down all the Rule 34 around Overwatch on the internet, Riot's just out there saying, hey, we see you, and we embrace your very particular love of our characters. So here's a taste, literally, of what you're looking for. It was, I felt like it felt a little bit forced. I'm not gonna lie. It felt like they were just like, okay, we want to have this scene in there. Let's find a spot for it, and here it is in the prison cell. So, yeah, sure.
Look,
great.
I don't know what you're talking about. There is nothing that gets people going like their sister imprisoning them and maybe going to commit suicide to get you thinking about, maybe I should just have sex right here, right now, instead of, I don't know, stopping her, finding her.
That was what I was kind of thinking. I was like, all right, I know the passions are flaring here, but aren't there more pressing matters at the moment to attend to? But because that was my only complaint with it. It felt kind of forced. It felt like they really just wanted this scene and they couldn't think of a good place to put it. So this is just the best they could come up with. So there you go. You got your scene. You happy now? But the whole time I was like, yeah, are there more important things? I mean, I know, sure, that's great and all, but aren't there more important things to do right now, plot wise? But maybe that's just me. I don't know.
I thought it was.
I'm just one of those plot guys, Yeah, I'm just into plot.
But now that we know the scissor cut exists, the people demand it.
The floor of that cell's got to not be super clean either.
Probably very cold.
Yeah, that too. I don't know. Well, whatever floats your airship, I guess. Whatever hex-techs your airship. I don't know. Yeah.
So funny stuff.
Yep. There was one more topic that we could talk about as well, which a Variety article came out about the show, right? And there was recently the Variety article talked about the cost of the show, that there was apparently supposed to be 5 seasons, that it was cut down. Was it a success, quote unquote, by Hollywood standards, all that kind of stuff. It was kind of critical of the show from a business perspective, which I think is valid. You look at a big expenditure of money in a company, and you look at the purpose of companies being make money, and you ask yourself, are the returns there for something like Arcane? We love it, and we don't care how much they spend on it, but shareholders might, people that are interested in business and finance might care. So this article existed in Variety. There was recently some pushback by none other than Riot something or other, Mark Merrill. I'm not sure what his title is. Co-founder, former president,
co-founder,
co-person. Yeah. And he wrote and of course the proper response for the place is Reddit, naturally. And so he wrote an article, or not an article, really just a couple paragraphs about some pushback against that. And he, I will say in this, it's kind of his word against their word. I'm not sure who to trust here, but I will say there is one thing in there that is absolutely true that he said, and there's one thing that's absolutely false to a laughable degree, and probably one of the most riot things I've ever heard. The true thing in that article, the only thing I can verify that is true, is the part at the end where he says, "You spell my name with a C." That is objectively true. He got that one right. His name is spelled indeed with a C. But right above that, he had the gall to say the line, the market for this high quality adult focus animation didn't exist before Arcane, so Hollywood has a hard time getting their head around why we would do this. As if this Hollywood reporter was like, I just didn't know you could make animated things for not children. I can't understand it. And so in that one sentence, Mark Merrill's denying the existence of the entire nation of Japan for the last 50 years at least, because there's been quite a bit of animated content geared towards adults that has come out of that is also high quality, I would say. I could name them, but we would be here for another 4 hours. Not to mention tons of stuff dating back decades in the United States as well. You've got stuff like heavy metal going back to the 80s, which sure you can laugh at the rotoscoping now, but it was pretty solid for its time. You know, you've got things like Legends of Vox Machina happening now. You've got going back to Japan, Grave of the Fireflies, right? Again, Japan, all the Miyazaki stuff that's ever been made, basically. Cowboy Bebop, man. Like I said,
Akira.
It's endless. Akira, right?
So I mean, basically all the movies of the 90s that they made. Like, I mean, convince me
we're not
that
misinterpreting this. Let me read this again one more time. Monty, just so you know. I'm going to read verbatim. The market for this high-quality adult focus animation, in quotes, didn't exist before Arcane, so Hollywood has a hard time getting their head around why we would do this. That is the exact quote from a Reddit thread, of course. But what a incredibly ignorant and also very Riot thing to say. Because this is also the company, by the way, that basically claims to have invented esports too. So we really shouldn't be surprised. But I read this and I was just like, are you kidding me? Mark with a C. Really? Really? You have the gall to say something like that.
It's also, sure, Arcane has been in development for a long time, but there have been very adult-focused animation pieces on Netflix that have come out, like Love, Death, and Robots, prior to Arcane. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's so no. In case you were wondering, and I can't believe I have to say this, Riot did not invent animation, high-quality animation geared towards adults. That's existed for longer than most of us have been alive. And just to state that is just so insane. And, you know, I've got a screenshot of it, so if he goes back and edits it, we've got the receipts. Don't worry. But
I just don't even understand why it's necessary to say anything like that, because you created a good product. Just say, hey, our focus was on creating a high quality animated series for adults and taking it to the next level. And it was good. And the animation's obviously amazing. It's a great show. But why do we have to pretend as if we invented this genre, which has been around for 50 plus years at this point in time? If we're talking about going back to anime in the 70s, which was very clearly for adults a lot of the time in Japan. Like it's insane.
The original Gundam series, not for kids, really. They dealt with a lot of very adult themes of war and the consequences of that and all that. I mean, we just did Gundam Requiem for a Dream, and sure that Requiem for a Dream, Requiem for Vengeance.
That would be a very intense movie. Gundam Requiem for a Dream. Bring me that one. Holy moly!
Gotta take the drugs to get on the Gundam. And that came out after Arcane Season 1, obviously. So, but there was lots of other Gundam stuff that came out before that. Iron Blooded Orphans, sure, that came out years before Arcane did, right? So, like I said, I don't even need to justify my position because it's so obviously true and his is so obviously false. And it just kind of goes that whole, it really throws the entire rest of his information into question if you weren't questioning it already, where it's just like, oh, don't worry about this analytical content about the cost of our production or anything, or our hiring practices around people in this entertainment wing that hasn't really done a lot yet. They just don't understand us, man. Don't listen to them. It's like, well, it kind of seems like they're putting together a better argument than you, bro. So, you know, but I love, yeah.
I mean, you understand Variety's take on this as well, which is that they are coming at this, like, Variety is the one of the principal journalistic sources from Hollywood. And it's understandable that they would come at this from an angle of how much money did you spend rather than what you make. And sure, that misses the mark because clearly Riot is doing this for different reasons. And probably Variety isn't considering the fact that, you know, this is a kind of a new way of potentially doing this media as a marketing exercise for your games that is not intended in and of itself to be profitable, but the value that it brings in the cachet will drive people in the future to Runeterra associated video games or other sales opportunities, let's say, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think they consider that as important, or and they don't really say that in the article because
Why
they're
not
coming in
just
with
say it?
With a lot of bias, right? They're coming in with a bias towards the traditional Hollywood, you know, TV and film model and way of doing things, which is understandable, but also rather silly from their angle. So I don't know, man, like a lot of this stuff, I always find Mark Merrill's responses to things confusing because it always seems like he has to pretend that he's more innovative than he is. And he also just rewrites history. And he's been doing this around Arcane because the way he portrays Riot as a company is that we have to do this super right. We're going to take as long as we need to make this good for the players. That's actually just not the DNA of Riot. As I said earlier, they were basically banging out champion releases every 2 weeks, and it was incredibly broken. They were obviously making a lot of money doing it, but doing it, getting the stuff out there as quickly and kind of haphazardly as possible is who Riot is, okay? And maybe they're changing that now, but you can't just pretend that this was always the way you did things because it just fucking wasn't. Right. And at the end of the day, Riot Games is a company that has made a lot of money on very derivative products. Riot is excellent at iterating over time and making something good. They're not good at having original ideas. They took the MOBA genre. Did they invent that? No. Did they make a great MOBA? Eventually, yes. What's Valorant? Oh, it's a tac shooter clone. You know what I mean? This is not a company that comes up with the next big idea. This is the company that takes ideas and then iterates on them and makes them excellent over time. And that's valuable. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just funny that Riot always has to pretend that they're inventing things when really they're just tinkering and perfecting things slowly, which is really where I think their strengths are.
And this is why I keep saying I'm excited to play their MMO someday, and I hope it comes out because I believe that it will be a very good MMO because they do have that history of taking existing genres and really, you know, doing them well, you know? So I don't know. I just don't know why he feels the need to fight back in a Reddit thread with sort of some very, you know, loose claims that aren't really verifiable other than he said versus, you know, this seemingly, you know, well-researched article, even if it is from a misguided perspective in parts, and then to finish it off with just a completely blatantly false statement. You know, I don't know why the need to do that, but I had to say something about it. And I also have to talk about the first comment after his comment because it's hilarious. Because his last sentence was in parentheses, and you spell my name with a C. So naturally, the first comment is, "Thanks for the insights, Mac."
The old Reddit switcheroo.
The old Reddit switcheroo. It's a classic. So I love that. Well done, Wolf Akella, on Reddit. But yeah, I mean, like, I don't know why he felt the need to post this, but just the fact, and I probably wouldn't have even brought this up at all, except for that last statement, which is just so horrifically and frankly stupidly false that it deserves calling out and it deserves harsh mocking. So we had to say something about that. Yeah, we loved Arcane. We loved the show.
Sure,
but people in your company should just not say stupid things online. That relate to this. Sorry.
And, you know, as far as this goes, it is a good show. It is worth watching. I think it did slow down towards the end. It was overpacked. We didn't get satisfactory resolutions. I would have rather the Arcane narrative been spun off into further seasons or an entirely different show. And this would have been primarily Vi, Jinx, Piltover, Zaun. I think that was, and Caitlyn, that was for me the emotional core of the show. And I wish we had seen that kind of arc completed before we get into this, like, world-breaking Arcane arc that we got, because it felt like the scope just increased from very personal to like insane emergency crisis at an existential level super quickly. So I wasn't the biggest fan of that, but overall Do I want to watch more stuff in this world now? Yes. And as somebody who has hated League of Legends lore for 15 years, me saying that, I think is a testament to how well this show has been made.
I'm like, I have to check to see if this isn't like a version of Monty that came back in time from like a different universe or something, because this is not the Monty I know. Yeah, it's but really the show is that good, you know. And we knew with all the stuff they set up in the first few episodes that it was going to have these struggles. It seemed inevitable, and it did, but it was certainly much better handled than a lot of shows out there. Arcane season 2 was still miles above nearly every Marvel show that has ever been made. So, you know, I think in that sense, they're doing great. I want to see them do more. I hope it doesn't take us years and years to see it, even though it probably will. Because I love the universe. I love the little teasers for what we're going into. I think it would be great to see a lot more of this. I want to see a big multimedia empire come up around the League of Legends universe here, you know? I think there's a lot of good stuff there for TV and film. And I eat this stuff up, right? So I hope they make it, you know.
And
I just hope when they're go ahead.
I'll leave you with this last hot take, because it wouldn't be me without just throwing in something spicy at the end, which is Arcane isn't even the best animated show on Netflix. That's Blue Eye Samurai. Go watch our show on that. It's a better show. Arcane's good. It's not as good as Blue Eye Samurai.
Well, I'll see how season 2 of that is.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for watching, guys. You have requested it. We have heard you. The Penguin next week. We'll see you then.